I've received many questions by email. I won't, probably more than I'd have time to answer within the 2 hours available, but so that there's time for participants of the meeting to ask questions, I'll spend about an hour answering as many of the questions that I've already received, and then I'll leave an hour for answering questions that people want to ask here and now. I'm answering these questions in the I received by email in the order in which I received them. The first one is from Peter. He wrote quite a long email, so I'll just summarize it. What he says is, I've always wondered since my teenage years, what the blazes is all this for or about? Why is it all being played out this way? If God is something akin to a timeless state of Satchidananda, whose brilliant idea was it to conjure up creatures in a situation with all the grief, effort, suffering and striving of human history? Couldn't God just sit there and be happy with his or her Satchidananda? And then he finally comments saying, stray thoughts from me, if troubling ones. Feel free to ignore them. After all, there is work to be done. I think the Buddha took that approach to speculative questions. The thing is, what we learn from Bhagavan is some questions are useful to ask and some questions are not useful to ask. Bhagavan did give metaphysical teachings because he gave metaphysical teachings that would be beneficial to us in our to help us on the path of self-investigation and self-surrender. The basic metaphysical teaching he gave is that all this appears, all this comes into existence, this whole universe comes into existence only when we rise as ego. And he said this is all just a dream. In a dream, how the dream world is created, our projection of the dream world and our perception of it are one and the same thing, because we project the dream world in our own consciousness. So now this world has been projected by us, and as we project it, we perceive it. So it has no external cause. The only cause for all this is our rising as ego. So all these questions that Peter has asked, what the blazes is all this about or for, and why is it all being played out this way, and also about God. God is not the cause for this appearance. Our rising as ego is the cause. Only when we rise as ego, what God actually is, God is our own real nature. But when we rise as ego, we limit ourselves. We seem to be a small person in our creation. That is, we rise as ego, project this world, and experience ourselves as a body in this world. So, because we have limited ourselves, God seems to be something other than ourselves. But God is not the cause of this. God, as Peter says, is just Satchidananda. That's pure being, awareness, and happiness. So God doesn't do anything. God just is. But when we rise as ego, God seems to be something other than us, and therefore we attribute to him so many things. We attribute to him creations, the creation of the world, the sustenance of the world, the dissolution of the world, and bestowing grace. Tirodhana means covering us with ignorance, and eventually bestowing grace and removing the ignorance. God doesn't actually do these things. God just is. In his mere presence, all these things are happening. The cause for the appearance of the world is our rising as ego. Why does ego rise? If anyone asked Bhagavan this question, he would say that is an illegitimate question, because ego, that question, it's a question that could be answered only if ego had actually come into existence. But what Bhagavan says is, rather than asking why, we should ask who or what. What is this ego? If we investigate ourselves, who now seem to be ego, to see what we actually are, we will see that we are just Satchidananda, infinite being, awareness, and happiness. We never rose as ego at all. There never was any such thing as ego. Ego seems to exist only so long as we look away from ourselves, so long as we attend to things other than ourselves. If we turn our attention back to see what we actually are, we will find there's no such thing as ego, and therefore there never was any creation. Nothing ever came into existence, because all this comes into existence only when we rise as ego. If we investigate ego, we'll find that it never actually rose, there never was any such thing, and therefore there never was any creation. That is the ultimate answer. Ultimate answer, that is ajata. Ajata means non-creation, non-appearance. Nothing has ever appeared, has ever come into existence. What is, always as it is. That is the ultimate truth. But so long as we rise as ego, an explanation is needed for why this world appears. And the simple explanation is, the world appears because we have risen as ego. What is the solution? Investigate ourselves and therefore thereby cease rising as ego. So long as we rise as ego, we have to suffer all the grief and effort and suffering and striving of human history, as you put it. All this is unnecessary. All this seems to be happening only because we have risen as ego. We have risen as ego because we have, so to speak, forgotten our real nature. If we were aware of ourselves as we actually are, we couldn't mistake ourselves to be anything else. Now we mistake ourselves to be a person because when we rise as ego, we seem to forget, we seem to be unaware of our real nature. So the solution is to be aware of our real nature. How to be aware of our real nature? Cease attending to other things and attend only to yourself. The more we attend to ourselves, the more ego will subside. When we attend to ourselves exclusively, without that is, if we attend to ourselves so keenly, but we cease to be aware of anything else, ego will dissolve in the clear light of pure awareness, and we will know, but there never was any such thing, and therefore never was any creation. So I hope that is a useful answer to your question, Peter, if you're here listening. The second question I received was from Frederick, who wrote, Michael says that decisions we make with our will build karma and are unsuccessful. But if a decision is not you, but a decision is not you, you do something, how can we know that decision was made by our will or not? Decisions, all our actions of mind, speech, and body, which includes our decisions, are driven by one or both of two forces. One force is our will. The other force is our destiny. Certain decisions we have to make in order to experience what we are destined to make. So those decisions are driven by destiny. Other decisions are decisions we make purely according to our own will. There may be yet others, sometimes we make decisions that are in accordance with our destiny, but are also driven by our will. So some actions are driven by both our will and destiny. Some are driven only by destiny, some are driven only by will. We cannot know which actions are driven by our will and which are driven purely by destiny, and we need not know. So long as we have a will, that is, so long as we have desires, likes, dislikes, attachments, hopes, fears, and so on, we will be acting according to our will, according to our desires. So the problem is not the actions, but the desire, the will with which we do them. So if we want to tackle this problem, we need to tackle our will. We need to tackle our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on. This is what we need to give up. We can, to a certain extent, give up our desires and attachments and likes and dislikes and so on, by devotion to God or by reflecting carefully on Bhagavan's teachings. But we cannot give up all our likes, and we cannot give up our likes and dislikes and desires entirely so long as we rise as ego, because it's the very nature of ego to have desire. Our real nature is infinite happiness, but as ego we have limited ourselves as a finite person. As a finite person, we cannot experience the infinite happiness that is our real nature. So we are all, as ego, we are always dissatisfied, and our dissatisfaction gives rise to desires, and and our desires then lead us to make decisions and do actions. So the only way to stop building fresh karma is to surrender our will. But to surrender our will effectively, entirely, we need to surrender the root of our will, which is ego. That is, it's only when we rise as ego that we have desires. When we are asleep, we have no likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, or anything. As soon as we rise as ego in waking or dream, we have so many desires, so many likes and dislikes. So the root problem is our rising as ego. In order to cease rising as ego, we need to investigate ourselves and thereby surrender ourselves. But we'll be willing to do so only when we, to a great extent, reduce the strength of our other desires and attachments. So the spiritual path is a path of purification of our will, chitta suddhi, as it's called in Sanskrit. Purifying our will means reducing the strength of our likes, dislikes, desires, and so on. The more they are reduced, the more willing we will become to turn within and surrender ourselves entirely. So we don't have to worry about our actions. Actions driven by destiny, we cannot change. Actions driven by our will, they will continue so long as we retain our will. Our aim is to surrender this will by surrendering its root, which is ego. So let us not worry about actions. Our only concern should be to surrender ourselves. And how can we surrender ourselves? By investigating ourselves. I hope that answers your question adequately, Frederick. The next question is from Indu. She wrote, can you please tell, the subject of her email was, can earnest prayer change fate? And in the body of the email, she wrote, can you please tell whether prayer to God can change destiny even by a little? For example, if we are not destined to get something, but we pray with all our heart, can it change destiny and get us what we want in this life itself? In short, what is the role of prayer in our lives? As far as prayer changing destiny is concerned, the simple answer is no, generally not, because what our destiny is what God has selected for us to experience in this lifetime, and He has selected our destiny, our prarabdha, in such a way that will be most beneficial for our spiritual progress. So God has no reason to change our destiny. Having planned the best course for us, He's not going to change just because we beg Him to give us more of what we want and less of what we don't want. So that's one point. The other point is, wanting to change our destiny even a little is diametrically opposed to the path of surrender, which is the path that Bhagavan taught us. We cannot have it both ways. We cannot want God, we cannot say that we're surrendering ourselves to God, but still want God to change this or that to suit our convenience. If we really want to surrender ourselves to God, we should accept whatever He gives us as His sweet will for our own benefit. We shouldn't even have a desire to change our destiny. The more we have desire to change our destiny, the more we are swimming against the current. We're opposing surrender, and we are opposing the will of God. So let us, it's true devotion to God is not, I want this or I want that. It's thy will be done. Your will is my will. That alone is happiness for me, as Bhagavan says in Arunachal Patakam. Yanishtam anishtam. Your will is my will. Imbedaku. That is happiness for me. So we shouldn't want anything other than what God wants for us. And what God wants for us is that we surrender, because only when we surrender will we be truly happy. So long as we have desires, we are dissatisfied, discontented, always restless. The more we surrender ourselves, the less strong our desires will be, and therefore the happier we will be. So praying to God to change our destiny is not only futile, it's also very foolish, because it's going against the path of surrender. And it's only by surrender that we can be truly happy. What's it matter what happens in our life, whether it's seemingly good or seemingly bad? What makes things seem bad, or what makes something seem bad and other things seem good? The things we like, we call good. The things we dislike, we call bad. The problem is our likes and dislikes. If we are free of likes and dislikes, then it doesn't matter what happens. Let that destiny be the best destiny in the world or the worst destiny in the world. We will be indifferent to it. So we, as I say, praying for any change to our destiny, praying for any material thing, anything in this world, any worldly experience of any kind whatsoever, is against the path of surrender. What is the role of prayer in our lives, as you're asking to? But prayer, the role of prayer is an expression of our will, what we want. So what is it that we should pray for? What we should pray for is we should pray to Bhagavan to give us the love for him that will allow us, that will make us willing to surrender ourselves completely to him. So praying only for love for him and consequent annihilation of our ego, that is what we should be praying for. We should pray for what is actually good for us. The root cause of all our troubles is our rising as ego. So praying for the annihilation of ego, that is the only prayer, worthy prayer. Now, of course, praying for the annihilation of ego, in order to annihilate ego, we need to have true love for God, true love for our real nature. So praying for love or praying for the annihilation of ego, that is the role that prayer should play in our lives. If instead of that we're praying for this or that, we are not yet willing to follow the path of surrender that Bhagavan has taught us. And the less willing we are to follow the path of surrender, the more we will suffer. So Bhagavan has given us a simple choice. Do you want to be happy or do you want to be unhappy? If you want to be happy, surrender yourself. If you want to be unhappy, continue praying for the fulfillment of your desires. So if we want to be happy, we should pray for not for the fulfillment of our desires, but for the eradication of our desires. And our desires can only be eradicated when their root is eradicated. The root of desire is ego, because only when we rise as ego do we have desire. So we want to be free of all desires, and we can be free of all desires only by being free of ego. So that is what we should pray for. If we pray sincerely for true love and the eradication of our ego, that prayer is our heart calling out to God, expressing what we desire most. So he will certainly clear the way for us and do all he can to help us to surrender, to make us more willing to surrender ourselves. So that is what we should pray for, not for anything else. And the next email I received was from Rajan Mani in Nepal. What he says is, I am Rajan from Nepal. I am very much fond of spiritual activities. I saw your interview on Conscious TV about Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi. I heartily want to know more about spirituality. Since 10 years, due to some ups and downs in life, I'm not interested in physical activities. I do meditate and read spiritual books and do some meditation, but I am not satisfied, and to go in depth. So please kindly suggest me or guide me what actually I can do. I saw the biography of Ramana Maharshi and so much awakened from his life. The answer to this, to all these these requests is hidden in the email itself. That is, in every sentence, the word that occurs again and again is I. I am Rajan. I am very fond of spiritual activities. I saw your interview. I'm interested in, I heartily want to know more about spirituality. I am not interested in physical activities. What is this I? When we use this word I, which stands out so much in these questions, what is it that it refers to? So that is what we need. That is true spirituality, investigating what is this I? Who am I who want to know more about spirituality? Who am I who want to attain liberation or whatever? Only when we know the truth of this I will we attain liberation and will we experience what true spirituality is. So this, investigating this I, that is the true spiritual path. Because only what is this I? This I, in this context, I here is referring to the person, Rajan from Nepal. When we say I am Rajan or I am Michael or whoever, we are identifying ourselves with a certain body. Michael is the name of one body, Rajan is the name of another body. But I am is something distinct from this body. We seem to be this body waking. In dream, we seem to be some other body. In sleep, we don't seem to be any body at all. So this body is an adjunct. It's not what we actually are. So what is true in the statement, I am Rajan, what is true is I am. What is untrue is Rajan. So let us cling to what is real, what is true. That is I am. So the more we turn our attention within to investigate this I, to cling firmly to I am, the more ego will subside, and the more we will come to understand what true spirituality is. Spirituality, we can get guidance from outside, from the teachings of Bhagavan, but to really understand what Bhagavan has taught us, we need to put what he taught us into practice. And we can put it into practice only by turning our attention within to investigate who am I. Investigate means we need to look at so metaphorically speaking, we need to look at ourselves very closely to see what we actually are. We need to turn our entire attention back towards what is this I? What is it that rises in me as I and says I am Rajan? That is what we need to investigate. The next question is about the feet of Guru, and it's a question from Kiran. What Kiran wrote is, when Janaki Mata caught hold of Bhagavan's feet, Bhagavan's response was, these are not the feet of your Guru. If you take these to be the feet of your Guru, then you will be disappointed one day, as these feet are perishable. The real feet of your Guru are the feet that are shining in your heart as I. Hold those feet, and they alone can save you. That's more or less what Bhagavan replied to said to Janaki Mata when she said she was clinging to the Guru's feet. So what Kiran asks about this is, when Bhagavan says this, is he referring to the ego as the feet of the Lord or the real I? I understand there is only one I, and that is Arunachala. But from ego's standpoint, it exists. So the question is, do we consider the ego as the feet of the Lord or that which is shining in us as I? As you say, Kiran, there is only one I. When I remains just as I, that is our real nature. That is pure awareness. But now we're experiencing I as I am Kieran, or I am Michael, or I am whoever. That is I mixed with adjuncts. That adjunct mixed I is ego. I is the same, but because of the mixture of adjuncts, it rises as ego. So when Bhagavan says, cling to what is shining in your heart as I, what is shining in your heart as I is pure awareness. That is the very heart means center. The very center of our experience is I am. Only I am is the original, the basic awareness. I am Kieran, or I am Michael. This is something secondary, but it appears and disappears. In waking and dream, we may be aware of ourselves as I am Kieran, or I am Michael. But in sleep, we're aware of ourselves just as I am. That is what Bhagavan refers to as the feet of the Lord. The feet of the Lord and the root are one and the same thing. That is, Bhagavan is always shining in our heart as pure awareness, as the basic awareness I am. So remove Kieran, and what remains is Bhagavan. So that is the essence of ego. What ego actually is just the pure awareness I am. But we rise as ego when this I am seemingly gets mixed with adjuncts, as I am Kieran or I am Michael. So when what Bhagavan is referring to when he says cling to I in your heart, he means the pure awareness as I. He means the pure awareness that we really are, the pure awareness that is I. But now we are not aware of that pure awareness as such. We're aware of, instead of being aware of ourselves just as I am, we're aware of ourselves as this adjunct mixed awareness, that is ego. That doesn't matter. Cling to ego, because when we cling to ego, what we are actually clinging to is I am. This can be illustrated with a simple analogy. If we mistake a rope to be a snake and we are frightened, Bhagavan may tell us, look at it carefully and see what it actually is. Bhagavan may tell us, no, it's not a snake, it's just a rope. Look at it carefully and see. So if we ask, which should I look at? Should I look at the rope or should I look at the snake? What will Bhagavan answer? But he will see our confusion. He'll say, no, it's sufficient. Just look at the rope. Just look at the snake very carefully. That's all you need to do. If you look at the snake very carefully, what do you see? A rope. So there are no two things there, a snake and a rope. There's only one thing, a rope, but it seems to be a snake. Likewise, there is only one eye, but now seems to be ego. Look at that one eye, and then you will see what it really is. So we don't have, when we're investigating ourselves, we don't have to decide but what we are investigating is ego or the real I. There is only one I. Investigate what you are now aware of as I. Now it seems to be ego. Look at it carefully enough, and you'll see that it's just pure awareness, which is what you refer to as the real I. I hope this adequately answers your question. So in short, the feet of Guru is the pure awareness that is always shining in our heart as I am without any adjuncts. So long as it mixed with adjuncts, still look at it and see what it actually is. Then adjuncts will disappear and what is real alone will remain. But the adjuncts are just an unreal appearance. The next email is from Isa from Istanbul. She says, she or he, I'm not sure. Some of today's pointers, I think what it meant here by pointers is some of the so-called gurus or spiritual teachers that are around nowadays. Some of today's pointers insist on the total futility of seeking, since the seeker itself is the embodiment of duality. And they say again that all the spiritual teachings and teachers are actually reinforcing the separateness of the seeker and request from him, her, what they can never grasp. And so the seeker, as the quintessence of duality and separateness, is drifted to the opposed direction. In best ways, seemingly in silence, seemingly in peace, feeling special, they actually gain when also hidden an empowered personality. So maybe it's time to throw away the burden that the seeker loaded with and be a simple, dreamy person again, but at least heard of his, her dream. What do you think Ramana Maharshi would say about it? What these people who say stop seeking, they haven't understood Bhagavan's teachings at all. This is directly opposed to Bhagavan's teachings. What is it that we are all seeking? What we are all seeking is essentially just happiness. Most of us, most of the time, we are seeking happiness in things other than ourselves. But we cannot stop seeking, because when we rise as ego, we separate ourselves from our real nature, which is happiness. And so we are all, as ego, we are always dissatisfied. Dissatisfaction leads to seeking. We are all seeking happiness. Seeking happiness is the very nature of ourself as ego. So we cannot stop seeking. If we stop spiritual seeking, we'll go back to worldly seeking. The problem is that we are seeking happiness in the wrong places. We're seeking happiness in things other than ourselves. What Bhagavan says is happiness is your real nature. You can find happiness only within yourself. Seek it within yourself. And to say that seeking is the embodiment of duality is a fundamental misunderstanding, because what we are seeking is not anything other than ourselves. We are seeking to know, who am I? What we are cannot be anything other than ourselves. So there's no duality there. When our attention turns towards anything other than ourselves, that is duality. Where there's subject and there's object. But when our attention turns back within, all duality comes to an end. There is only the awareness, the self-attentiveness. So there is no duality at all. So true seeking, if understood correctly, is not the embodiment of duality, it's the cessation of duality. So many people, they read a little bit about Indian spirituality, a little bit about Advaita, they misunderstand it, and they start teaching very false and misleading ideas. Anyone who says stop seeking should be avoided, because they haven't, that's an impossible instruction. They're asking us to do something which we can never do. We can never stop seeking. Seeking is our very nature. We, moment to moment, wherever our mind goes, it goes there seeking happiness. The one thing, all our desires, the essence of all our desires is the desire for happiness. Why do we desire happiness? Because happiness is our real nature. We cannot be satisfied so long as we are seemingly separated from our real nature, which is infinite happiness. So until we experience happiness, we cannot stop seeking, and we should not stop seeking. But we should stop seeking it in the wrong place, in things other than ourselves. We should seek it within ourselves, because we ourselves are happiness. I hope that answers the question adequately, Isa. The next question is from Neil David. He writes, I'm a semi-spiritual 49-year-old chap, but flip between reading and studying Buddhist, Ramana Maharshi, Papaji, and Nisargadatta material. I have a strong pull towards Ramana for the last 16 years or so, after being introduced to him by a friend, but have struggled to put things into practice. My problems occur with the concept of God, and I guess this is why I often return to Buddhism. So my first question is around the notion of God. What is the understanding of God as informed by Ramana? Secondly, I guess I don't really know where to start when studying Ramana, or even the concept of meditating on I find a difficult concept. Do I just repeat I in my mind, or question mark? The first question about God. But according to Bhagavan, God is nothing but our own real nature. What we actually are is what is called God. So long as we limit ourselves as ego, God may seem to be something other than ourselves. But what God actually is our own real nature. For people who come from a path of devotion, understanding that God is not something outside ourselves, but something inside ourselves. So but God is our own real nature is useful to know, and it brings them from a path of dualistic devotion to the path of non-dualistic devotion. For people who, like you, who say you've got a problem with the concept of God, Bhagavan would say, leave God alone, know yourself. We don't need to, if you find the concept of God useful to your spiritual path, fine. If you don't find it useful, it's not necessary. All that is required is that you know what you really are. When you know what you really are, then you will know what God really is. Until then, if you find a problem with the concept of God, it's not necessary. It may be useful for some people, but it's not essential. What is essential is that we know what we really are. And in order to know what we really are, we need to investigate ourselves. And about that you ask, you say you have difficulty with the concept of meditating on the I. When you say the I, it makes it sound like I is an object. You yourself are I. I is not something other than yourself. What you need to meditate on is only yourself. You ask whether you should repeat I in my mind. What we are to meditate on is not the word I, but what is denoted by the word I. Sometimes by slowly repeating the word I in our mind and trying to see what is it that word I refers to, what is it that word I denotes, that can be a help, particularly the initial stages. For many people, because we are so accustomed to attending to objects, attending to the subject seems to be very, very elusive or something too subtle for us. It seems at first, but it's not actually so, because we can attend to anything that we are aware of. The one thing that we are always aware of is ourself. So we can, I refers to our basic self-awareness, our awareness of our own existence. So it's that awareness, that the basic awareness, I am, that is what we should be attending to. Now we are aware of ourselves as I am Neil David, or I am Michael, or I am whoever. What is real, as I said earlier, what is real is only I am. Michael or Neil David or any other name or form is not what we actually are. What we are is the pure awareness I am. That is what we need to try to focus our attention on. So we need to leave aside body, mind, thoughts, everything, and just be, what is the background awareness that who am I? That is what we need to be investigating. So it's, as I say, sometimes repeating the word I may be helpful. Just like if you say any noun, it refers to a certain thing. If I say apple, it brings a certain object to your mind. You know what the word apple refers to. So if you go on repeating apple, 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 your mind will be dwelling on an apple. So likewise, if you go on repeating I, as I say, you shouldn't be focusing on the word I, but on what is denoted by the word I. What is that awareness in me that I refer to as I? So who am I? What is this I? This is what we should be investigating. So it's not meditating on an object, it's meditating on the subject, on that which is aware, the perceiver, not anything perceived. You refer to Buddhism. One of the central teachings of Buddha, but expressed in the Pali literature, in the Tipitaka. I think it comes in the Dhammapada and in several other places. He says, Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. That means all dharmas are anatma. Dharma there means phenomena. Anatma means not oneself. So what Buddha is saying is all phenomena are not ourself. So we are not anything perceived. We are not any object of awareness. We are that which is aware of all these things. So we need to we need to leave aside all phenomena and try to focus our attention just on that which is aware of phenomena. So that is what he meant by meditating on I. There's a lot more that can be said on this, but I hope that that is sufficient to get you started. Because the more we turn our attention back towards ourselves, towards I, towards that which is, toward that our basic awareness of our own existence, the more clarity we will get and the more clear this path of self-investigation will become to us. The next question is from Neeraj. He writes, just 2 questions. How to deal with lethargy in the spiritual life? What place does prayer have? Lethargy, very few people are totally lethargic. Most people, if they're lethargic in one, they may be lethargic in some respects, but not lethargic in other respects. If we have too much interest in things other than ourselves, in the outside world, we will lack interest in turning our attention within. That we can describe as lethargy in the spiritual life. The more we read and think deeply about Bhagavan's teachings, the more we will lose interest in external things and we'll gain interest in knowing what we actually are. So, and then if we try to put into practice what he taught us, slowly, that lethargy, that lack of interest in turning within, that will drop off. And the enthusiasm to know who we really are will increase. So that's the way to deal with lethargy. The other question is, what place does prayer have? As I explained earlier, praying for anything other than the annihilation of ego is going against the spiritual path. It's going against the path of surrender. What we should pray for is only for complete surrender, that is for the annihilation of ego. And we can also pray for the love, but obviously we're not going to surrender ourselves unless we have great love to do so. So praying for love, praying for true bhakti, that is the love to surrender ourselves completely, and praying for the annihilation of ego, praying for the liking to turn our attention within, that is appropriate. Praying for anything else is inappropriate. In one verse in Sadhguru wrote a beautiful work called Sri Ramana Sahasram. It's 1,000 verses praying for jnana. And in one of the verses he sings, Antamukha Mandri Varam Ayiram Nan Ketalam, Enda Pira Varangal Enne Yulle, Undirutu, Oivadara Chatrams, Uddhavas Dido. I can't remember exactly what it is, but the meaning of that is, though I ask for 1,000 boons other than antamukham, antamukham means turning the attention within, do not fulfill any of those except for the request to turn within, do not fulfill any other boon that I ask for. So the only thing we should pray for is the love to turn within and surrender ourselves. The next question is from Tarun Patel. The question is, hi, my question is in relation to the dream state and waking state. I tentatively believe that this so-called waking state is no different to the dream state, but with not enough conviction so as to bring it to an end. My question is, why in my waking state can I sometimes remember my dream, but in my dream state, I can never recall what happened in my waking state? It's not true to say that in dream we don't recall what happened in the waking state. Generally in a dream, we still experience, we still take ourselves to be the same person that we take ourselves to be in waking state. Of course, the dream body is a different body, but we still have the same identity. If I think, if you are in the waking state, you take yourself to be Tarun. In the dream state also, you take yourself to be the same Tarun. And you may have certain memories. You meet people you recognize, you meet your parents, you meet your members of your family. So how can you recognize those members of your family if you're not remembering your waking state? So memory works both ways. In waking state, we remember dream, and in dream, we remember waking state. But another thing to remember, what we now refer to as dreams, the whole of our present life is a dream. But what we, in our present waking state, so-called waking state, refer to as dream, the dreams we have at night, they are dreams within a dream. So in this dream of our whole life, we have a certain identity. Tarun or Michael or whoever, we have got a certain identity. And during the course of that long dream called this life, every day we need some time in sleep, and during the sleep our sleep is interrupted by dreams. In the dream, we still take ourselves to be the same person. So they are dreams within a dream. But the important point to understand is that what we are now experiencing is essentially no different to a dream. And we cannot logically prove that what we are now experiencing is a dream, but we have no reason to believe that this is anything other than a dream, because whatever we now experience, we could equally well experience in a dream. So the assumption that waking is somehow different to a dream, that waking is not a dream, is an unjustified assumption. We've got no evidence. Our present experience doesn't give us any evidence, but what we are now experiencing is anything but a dream. And according to Bhagavan, this is all a dream. And nothing exists independent of our perception of it. Only when we rise as ego, we see all this. When we don't rise as ego, this doesn't exist, according to Bhagavan. I'll stop answering these questions here. And any questions that people have sent me but I've not yet answered, I will answer at the next meeting we have. That's in a couple of weeks' time, because I want to leave time for people to ask questions now. So if you'd like to ask any questions, you may raise your hand, and then Chris will one by one unmute people and allow them to ask questions.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. Yes.
Namaste, Guruji.
The only guru is Bhagavan.
I feel
no Guruji. I am just a simple...
When the student is, the guru appears.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask a question, like in this world, like in this reality, or Maya as we call it, we go about doing all our daily duty as karma. At the end of it, how do we reconcile what is the real purpose of our existence?
The purpose of life is whatever purpose we give it. Life has no purpose of its own. Some people are interested in, people have so many different interests, And following their interests is what most people take to be the purpose of their life. So if people are interested in politics, they'll take politics to be the purpose of their life. If they're interested in social service, they'll take social service to be the purpose of their life. So we have to decide for ourselves, what is the purpose of our life? What is it that we are all seeking? Whatever our interest may be, whether we're interested in sports or in politics or in making a lot of money or in gaining name and fame or whatever we may be interested in, what is the motivating force behind all our interests? The one thing that we are all seeking is happiness. So ultimately, the purpose of life, if we had to say, give an objective answer, the one purpose for everyone's life is to be happy. We all want to be happy. So if we take happiness to be our sole purpose, we have to decide how are we to achieve the happiness we are seeking? According to Bhagavan, happiness is our real nature. Because happiness is our real nature, and we are now aware of ourselves as such, that is the reason why we are all seeking happiness. But most of us are seeking happiness in the wrong places. We are seeking happiness in wealth or in power or in having lots of friends or in pursuing whatever interests we may have. We think we'll get whatever we are seeking outside ourselves, we are seeking it because we think we'll derive happiness from that thing. So Bhagavan says happiness doesn't lie in anything outside ourselves. Happiness is our real nature. If we want to be happy, we have to turn our attention within. We have to find the happiness. We have to find happiness within ourselves, because happiness doesn't exist in anything else. In order to experience our real nature, we need to surrender ourselves. Ourself here means what we now take ourselves to be. Now we take ourselves to be a person. So long as we are aware of ourselves as I am this person, a person is finite. So we cannot experience the infinite happiness that we really are. So we need to surrender this false notion, I am this person, I am this body. That false notion is what Bhagavan calls ego. So we need to surrender ego. How can we surrender ego? Only by investigating it, by turning our attention within to see, who am I? What actually am I? The more we turn our attention within, the more ego will subside. And when we turn our attention entirely 180 degrees, so to speak, back towards ourselves, we'll be aware of ourselves alone, and thereby we'll be aware of ourselves as we actually are. Because what we actually are is not only infinite happiness, but it's also infinite awareness, pure awareness. And pure awareness is not awareness of anything, it's just awareness. Awareness that is not aware of anything other than itself. That is pure awareness, that is our real nature. So only when we attend to ourselves so keenly that we are not aware of anything other than ourselves, will we be aware of ourselves as we actually are, and thereby we'll be aware of ourselves as infinite happiness. So let us take infinite happiness to be the soul, achieving infinite happiness to be the sole purpose of our life. But when we achieve it, we won't have achieved anything because we're already that. Bhagavan said, nothing, we don't need to gain anything. We need to simply get rid of garbage. Infinite happiness is our real nature. Because we have risen as ego, we seem to have separated ourselves from that infinite happiness. Get rid of ego, and what remains is what was always there, which is infinite happiness, which is our real nature.
Male vanakkam, Michael Aya. Good afternoon, Michael. I'm from New Zealand, so I'm waking up and I'm not sleeping and waiting for you to see you. Yeah, this is just to ask about the follow-up of the dream. The dream, I heard from your speech that we are sleeping because of our attention. We are looking outside, and to get re-energized, we are sleeping. But scientifically, when we say that we need to have a deep sleep, that deep sleep is, they divided into REM, non-REM. That REM sleep, we are dreaming, but that is important for rest the brain. So why do we get the dream? And also that is the deep sleep we are dreaming. So it is little confusion with the scientific explanation.
Okay.
So can you clarify that?
Well, the scientific explanation is based on a metaphysical fallacy. That is, all science is fine in its own sphere. It can tell us a lot about the external world, but all science is based upon the assumption that what we perceive exists independent of our perception of it. So all scientists will believe that we live in a world where many people, when one person is sleeping, the world is still seen by all those other people. But according to Bhagavan, this is all just a dream. So a dream exists only when we see it. While we are dreaming, we see many people. And we may have, there may be, in our dream, there may be textbooks on science, and we can read about, in our dream, we can read about REM sleep and all these things. But that's all our own mental projection. According to, how can we be sure that our present state is not a dream? If our present state is just a dream, all our science, all the physics and chemistry and all the research done by neuroscientists and the psychologists and everyone, it's all part of our dream. So all this REM sleep, who can witness the REM sleep? The REM sleep is in the view of others, but what is our own experience? In a dream, we are not aware of REM sleep. In dream, we're aware of ourselves as a body in a world. It's only when we wake up, we think, oh, that dream occurred while I was sleeping. But when we wake up from a dream, we assume we are waking, but actually we're just coming from one dream into another dream. According to Bhagavan, any state in which we're aware of things other than ourselves is just a dream. Don't expect the majority of scientists to agree with this, because scientists make the assumption that the world is not a dream, but it exists independent of our perception of it. So we have to decide what we choose to believe. It's not, I mean, most scientists don't really think much about metaphysics. They just make metaphysical assumptions. Most people make metaphysical assumptions. So the general metaphysical assumption is that the world exists independent of our perception of it. Most people assume that without even thinking about it. But Bhagavan asks us to consider, how can you be sure that anything exists when you're not aware of it, when you don't perceive it? When we are dreaming, the dream world seems to be, we make the assumption that the dream world exists independent of our perception of it. We believe that all the people we see in the dream are seeing the world just as we are. But when we wake up, we realize, oh, it was all existed only in my own mind. There weren't, those other people were just a figment of my imagination. Even the person I seemed to be in a dream was also a part of my dream. So it's all a product of my imagination. Likewise, if this waking state is just a dream, this is all just our own mental creation. It appears, it seems to exist so long as we perceive it. If we don't perceive it, then it doesn't exist. That is what Bhagavan teaches us. If we want to believe, if we want to believe the naive metaphysics on which science is based, the metaphysics that things exist independent of our perception of it, fine, we can do so. Bhagavan has no objection. But if we are seeking to know what is the truth, Bhagavan says, why should you believe anything that you don't know? You don't know that this world, you can never know that this world exists independent of your perception of it. You can never know that this world is anything but a dream. So why should you assume things? Why should you believe things that you've got no way of verifying? Science is supposedly based on evidence. But there's no evidence for the metaphysical assumption on which science is based. That is the assumption that the world exists independent of our perception of it. So if we really want to rely on evidence, we shouldn't make the unjustified assumption that this world is anything but a dream. Does that adequately answer your question?
Thank you very much.
So now Blossom Gale, I'll unmute her.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, we've recently just had Ramadan, you may know. I just want to know, why do people, I come from a Hindu background, you see, and I want to know why people do pujas and they pray to certain gods, you know, like Krishna, and then like you've had this Ramadan now, which, you know, people have done for I don't know how many days. What are people expecting to gain from this? Or is it, I mean, what are they worshipping? If, you know, I don't know Krishna, I've never met Krishna, I've read books about him, I don't understand some of them, but no one seems to be able to tell me what they're doing when they're doing a puja, you know, to a goddess, and they seem to do it every day. And what are they hoping to achieve?
Well, most religious people, whether they are Hindus or Muslims or Christians or whatever, most religious people are seeking to fulfill certain desires. They pray to God, they do pujas, they do rituals or whatever. Basically, people want to have, they have so many worldly desires. They want to live a happy life. And if they believe in some afterlife, they want to go to heaven afterwards. So they want to please God, because only if you please God will he allow you into heaven. If you displease him, then you're out, you have to go to hell. So people have, mostly, if people are seeking the fulfillment of their, if they're praying for the fulfillment of their desires, or if they're praying to go to heaven or whatever, they are seeking, they're seeking things other than themselves. That is fine at their own level. We've all been through that, whether we remember it or not. We've all been through that, seeking happiness outside ourselves. Religious people are not much different. That is the majority of religious people are not much different to worldly people. It's just that they take God to be another means to achieving their end. If I want to become rich, the best way is to become a crafty businessman and cheat people. But if God can also help me, well, let me give a share of my profits to God so that he can help me and support my business. There are people who they may not think it in quite those terms, but they're behaving in that way. They'll be ruthless at exploiting people in business, but they go to the temple or the church or the mosque or the vihara or wherever they go, and they pray, and they think God is going to support them. But we can't paint all religious people with one brush. I mean, obviously people, there are different levels of maturity. Some religious people are coming closer to the path of surrender. They understand that just asking God for this or that is not what we should be doing. We should be praying to God, asking God to give us love for him, enable us to surrender ourselves to him. So going through all those the preliminary stages of religion, where you pray to God for the fulfillment of your desires. So long as we're praying to God for the fulfillment of our desires, even if we pray to God but we go to heaven, that's still the fulfillment of a desire. Our devotion is not for God; it's for what we can get from God. God is a means, but when our devotion matures, God doesn't become the means, he becomes the end. Then we pray for God himself. But how can we attain God? How can we know God? Or how can we become one with God? Or whatever people say. If God is infinite, he cannot be other than I. Because if anything is other than God, he's therefore finite. So if God is infinite, he is nothing other than our own real nature. We cannot be anything other than him. So if we know ourselves, if we know what we actually are, we will know God, because God is what we actually are. So religion ultimately comes to this same path, to this path of what Bhagavan has taught us. This is the culmination of all religion. But this also, Bhagavan's path also bypasses religion. We don't need any religion to come to Bhagavan's path. We don't need to be a Hindu or a Buddhist or Sikh or a Jain or a Christian or Muslim. Bhagavan said the only qualification required for this path, we need to know I am. Since we all know I am, we're all qualified. So religion is ultimately becomes unnecessary. All that is necessary is to know ourselves and thereby to surrender ourselves. So religion has its own place, but religion can also be misused. Religion has been misused for millennia. People have been fighting wars over religion. They've been persecuting each other and doing all sorts of unspeakable things in the name of religion. So, because religion is a product of the human mind. In Sanskrit, one of the terms that is used for religion is mata. Bhagavan said mata is what comes from mati. Mati means the mind. So he said, follow whatever mati you want, but turn within and seek the truth of this mati. I hope that adequately answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Right.
So now we have Kiran. I'm just going to unmute Kiran.
Hi, Michael. So the question basically is, sometimes this thought that Bhagwan did not grace us to be in his physical presence troubles me. While that is there, Bhagwan said that he has nowhere else to go and he will always be available for us here and now. If that is really true, how can we gain this experience where we feel that we are always in his presence and there is absolutely nothing to be worried about?
Bhagavan's basic teaching is, I am not this body. But because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we mistake Bhagavan to be a body. And we feel, oh, we weren't fortunate to be in Bhagavan's physical presence. But what Bhagavan said is, when he was asked what is it, whether he's an incarnation of this God or that God or who he is, he said, Arunachala Ramana, he referred to himself as Arunachala Ramana, is that which blissfully shines as awareness in the hearts of all jivas from Hari downwards. They're beginning with Hari, beginning with Vishnu. That means from all living beings, from the highest God to the lowest insect. What is shining in their heart is pure awareness. That is Arunachala Ramana. So we are always in the presence of Bhagavan. He is always shining in our heart. Sadhuam used to say, in those days there were many people who've been with Bhagavan for many, many years. And Sadhuam used to say, people think that those of us who were in Bhagavan's presence are very fortunate. But actually, it is not necessarily the case, because when we were in Bhagavan's presence, there was a veil of Maya over us. For example, he spoke about himself. He said, I used to compose songs, and I'd only be satisfied if I go and I sing my song in front of Bhagavan. But then I used to laugh at myself, thinking, from where did this song come, if not from Bhagavan? And I'm foolishly taking Bhagavan to be a person outside. I want to come and sing my song, as if it's my song, not his song, in front of him. So he said, for those who are in the presence of Bhagavan, there is that subtle Maya, but Bhagavan is that physical form. For those who came after Bhagavan, we are free that's at least that Maya we are free from. And he said, many of the old devotees, you can see, they still have that pride. Oh, I was with Bhagavan for so many years. That it shows they were not really with Bhagavan, because so long as an ego rises, we are separating ourselves from Bhagavan. If we really want to be with Bhagavan, ego needs to subside. So we shouldn't, even if we had the good fortune of being in Bhagavan's presence, which very few of us now, there are very few people left now who had that good fortune, that shouldn't be, that firstly, it shouldn't be a source of pride. Secondly, we shouldn't think but not being in Bhagavan's physical presence is not being with Bhagavan. Bhagavan is ever present in our heart as I. And if we want external support, he's always available in the form of his teaching. And if we want a physical form, he's indicated that he's always there in the form of Arunachala. So there's nothing, that's why in many other traditions, they have a sampradaya. One guru appoints another guru and another guru, and there's a whole lineage of gurus. In Bhagavan's path, there's no lineage. The one person who was most qualified to be guru after Bhagavan was Murughana. But if people came to Murughana and said, Swami, will you be my guru? He said, no, there is only one guru. Bhagavan alone is the guru of all of us. So there's no, nowadays there are people who claim, oh, I'm in a lineage of so-and-so who was a disciple of so-and-so who was a disciple of Bhagavan. That there's no such thing in Bhagavan's path, because Bhagavan is the guru, is the eternal guru. He's the guru who is always shining in our heart. Long before we knew about Bhagavan, he was our guru. He's the one who's been leading us through so many janmas, so many lives. We have been guided by him. And finally, we've come to these teachings. So there's only one guru. Bhagavan says, the 12th paragraph of Who Am I? Unmail Kadavulam, in the first sentence, he says, Kadavulam Guruvum Unmail Verala. That means God and Guru are not different. Since there is only one God, there is only one Guru. The Guru may appear in different forms, but Guru actually is only one. So, and that one is our, in other places, Bhagavan said, God, Guru, and Self are one. So God is our real nature. Guru is our real nature. If we want to have contact with Guru, we need to turn within. That's why Bhagavan often said, the best satsanga is Atma-sanga. Being with ourselves. In other words, turning our attention within. And, abiding as we really are. That is the true satsanga. So it's natural for us when we first hear about Bhagavan, we feel, oh, I wish I could have seen Bhagavan. But we shouldn't feel like that, because seeing Bhagavan in name and form is not seeing Bhagavan. Bhagavan has defined what real seeing is in verse 21 of Uludunapadu. He ends by saying, Unadal Khan. Unadal Khan literally means becoming food is seeing. That means being swallowed by God is seeing him. So only when we are swallowed by Bhagavan, when this ego is completely devoured by him, then only we are really seeing him. And when we become one with him, then only can we know him. So long as we see him as another, as something other than ourselves, we are not knowing him as he actually is. So no, we should never feel dejected by the fact that we haven't seen Bhagavan physically, because Bhagavan's whole teaching is to turn our attention back within. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Michael, very much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Traditional Vedantins usually study scriptures years together. If the method of liberation is as simple as self-attention, then why do they go through all the trouble of studying all the scriptures?
Good question. Yes, but Bhagavan said that the truth is not to be found in books. All those scriptures, they may be pointing us in the right direction, but also they've been misinterpreted in many ways, because many of the people who call themselves traditional Vedantin, they say what is true, but they misinterpret it. They say the problem is ajnana, avidya, ignorance. And the only way to remove avidya is by vidya. But what is vidya? They take what they study and learn from books to be vidya. Bhagavan said, you cannot get vidya from books. You can get vidya only from within yourself. You yourself are vidya. You must know yourself. So the aim of all those ancient books is to tell us to turn within and know ourselves. When we've understood that, why should we go on and on and on studying endlessly. We need to turn our attention within. So more important than any scriptures is the teachings of Guru. We have come to Bhagavan. Bhagavan has given us the quintessence of all the ancient texts, and he's given it in a much simpler and clearer form, but also in a very deep and Bhagavan has expressed it in a much more radical way. For example, in most of the ancient texts, they say the problem is avidya. But Bhagavan asks a simple question: for whom is avidya? Obviously, avidya is not for Brahman. Avidya is for ego. Avidya is the very nature of ego. So the real problem, according to Bhagavan, is ego. So this ego is avidya. Avidya means non-awareness of us. Vidya means awareness of ourselves as we actually are. Avidya is not being aware of ourselves as we actually are. That is the very nature of ego. So in order to get rid of ego, we need to be aware of ourselves as we actually are. So, but Bhagavan has expressed it. There's a lot of confusion in the ancient texts. In fact, after Shankara, there were several different schools of Advaita among his followers, and they each interpreted things in their own way. Bhagavan has come and simplified the whole thing, so there's no room for different interpretations, because Bhagavan had made it so simple. So we are very fortunate to have come to Bhagavan. Having come to Bhagavan, reading a little bit about the old texts, it's maybe interesting, but it's not essential. And we shouldn't allow ourselves to get too waylaid in studying ancient texts. All that we need to know is given by Bhagavan in a few texts. If you study and understand Nana, who am I, Ulladu over 40 verses, and Upadesha Undiyar, and a few other small works Bhagavan has written, that itself is sufficient. You can master the whole of Vedanta just by reading a few texts that Bhagavan has written. You will understand the essence of Vedanta. You will understand Vedanta better than those who have been studying it for years and years and years. Because Bhagavan has made it so simple. Because the truth, what does Advaita mean? Advaita means not two. So what can be simpler than not two? As soon as you get two, you get complication. So Advaita philosophy should be the simplest of all philosophies, but it's made so complicated. Because there are historical reasons why it was complicated, because in those days there were many different systems of philosophy competing with each other in India. And so to establish Advaita, you had to argue against the other schools, you had to defend Advaita against other schools. And so they would attack in so many ways, and it becomes more and more complicated. Bhagavan's not interested in any of that. Bhagavan's interested only in our salvation. So Bhagavan has given us the simple essence, and Bhagavan hasn't asked us to go and argue with anyone. If other people want to believe other philosophies, they're welcome. There's nothing to do with us. So Bhagavan says arguing about philosophy or religion is only so long as we rise as ego, there's scope for arguing about philosophy. So Bhagavan leave all this philosophical arguments. Come to the simple, what do we need to know? All this appears only when we rise as ego. He says that he gives everything in a nutshell in verse 26 of Ulladu Napadu. Ahandayundayin and Aitmundaham. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. That's our experience. In waking and dream, we're aware of ourselves as I am this person, and we're aware of so many other things. In sleep, when ego subsides, everything disappears. So when ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. When ego doesn't exist, ahande indrel indru anatum. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahande yabamam. Everything is ego. Adalal yadu idu indra nadale and anadale overall yavam and all. Therefore, know that investigating what is this ego is giving up everything. That is, when we investigate ego, ego disappears and everything else disappears along with it. And what then remains, that alone is Advaita. That alone is Satchidananda, Ekkameva Advaityam, one only without a second.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
So we don't need all those, they had their role in the past, but now we've got Bhagavan's teachings. They, more or less, we can say all the old texts have become redundant.
No, actually, there were some texts that Bhagavan himself translated or recommended were very specifically for his path.
But they were all in a particular context. It was when Bhagavan was asked to translate things. Bhagavan didn't do these things of his own accord. And it's not really necessary. I mean, for some people, for instance, people say Bhagavan recommended the recitation of Ribhu Gita. But I've talked to old devotees about this, and what some people told me is, yes, Bhagavan did recommend that for people who needed to gain faith in the basic principles of Advaita. They needed, but Ribhu Gita repeats a lot of I am awareness, I am consciousness, I am Brahman, I am. So some of these texts, they're useful for certain people at a certain stage of spiritual development. But if we've come to Bhagavan's path, if we're really intent on following what Bhagavan taught us, all these things are unnecessary. Following Bhagavan's simple path of self-investigation and self-surrender, that's all that we need. And as far as external support is concerned, it's all there available in Bhagavan's own texts. But I'm a bit of a, for me, Bhagavan is everything. So other people may disagree with me, but having tasted the fullness of Bhagavan's teachings, I mean, I can't say I've tasted them fully, but I mean, having tasted how complete Bhagavan's teachings are, for me, all the other things is, everything else is tasteless food compared to what Bhagavan has given us. When we've eaten a sumptuous feast, why should we go for anything else? But
are people connected with our samskaras?
Yes, yeah, of course. And people are free to disagree with me. I have no objection to people disagreeing with me, but I can only speak from my own experience. And for me, Bhagavan's teachings are more than enough. They're complete in themselves. They're not lacking in any way.
Murti was also ready to ask a question, I think.
Yes, he was the next one.
Michael, can you hear me?
Yes.
Michael, thank you very much for your, excuse me, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for exposing Bhagavan's teachings to all of us. It was wonderful as usual. My question is more related to some insights from your own practice of self-investigation and self-inquiry. Insights like the hurdles you face, some of the nuances in going through the who am I process, anything which can be shared, because sharing notes sometimes throws newer avenues to practitioners. So I would sincerely appreciate if you can share any, if possible. Thank you.
I can say very generally that the more we practice this path, the more clarity we get. Beyond that, there's nothing much to say, because anything that we can describe is a phenomenon. Anything that we experience is a phenomenon. It's something other than ourselves. What when we are investigating ourselves, we are trying to turn our attention away from all phenomena, away from all experiences, back to knowing who is the experiencer. So, we are all aware I am, but can you describe what that awareness I am is? We can't describe it. So anyone who describes experiences, they're describing something other than themselves. That is not self-investigation. Self-investigation is trying to be aware of ourselves alone. Okay, when you say obstacles and things, yes, we all know when we try to turn our attention within, it quickly bounces out again. Why is that? It's because of our desires and attachments, because of what are called Vishaya vasanas, our inclination, our liking, our taste to be aware of things other than ourselves. We can overcome these only by persistently following this path, as Bhagavan explained very, very clearly. The more effort we make, the more we try to turn our attention within. Okay, we keep on failing. Our attention keeps on jumping out again. But if we persevere in trying to turn our attention back again and again, slowly these Vishaya vasanas, the desires and attachment, likes and dislikes and so on, slowly they will lose their strength, and our love to know ourselves will increase in strength. So more than this, to talk about, sometimes people ask me for my personal experiences. The whole problem is that we now mistake ourselves to be a person. The whole story of this person's life, this is not ourself. This is all something other than ourself. I can tell you a lot about Michael. I can tell you what Michael has been through and all his experiences, but that is not what we are seeking. I'm seeking to know who am I, not who is Michael. So Michael's experiences are irrelevant. Who am I? That which is ever present, not that which appears and disappears. All experiences appear and disappear. What is ever present is I. That is what we are seeking to know. So pointing to anything else, talking about experiences, would only be misleading people, distracting them away from the path. Each one of us have to turn our attention within to know ourselves. And the only way to, this is a path, Bhagavan very aptly called this path vichara. Vichara means investigation. When you're investigating, you learn how to investigate as you go along. If you start some investigation, you don't know where it's going to lead you. But as you proceed with your investigation, the way becomes clearer and clearer. So sometimes people ask how to practice this vichara that Bhagavan taught us. The answer is, he's given us some clues. Try to follow those clues. Then you will learn as you proceed. The only way to learn how to investigate yourself is to investigate yourself. Just like the only way to learn to ride a bicycle is to get on a bicycle and fall off many times. And by trial and error, one eventually learns how to balance. It cannot be taught in books. You can read many, many books on how to ride a bicycle, but you still don't know how to ride a bicycle until you actually try. Likewise, reading many, many books, knowledge is not got, true knowledge, useful knowledge is not got from books. Knowledge is got from practice. The more we try to investigate ourselves, the clearer the way will become. That's why Bhagavan said, you cannot get the knowledge of what we are seeking is self-knowledge. You cannot get self-knowledge from books. You can get self-knowledge only from yourself. You need to turn your attention within. The books are useful pointers, fine. But we have to follow where they're pointing. Where are they pointing? Back within. So turn back within. I hope that adequately answers your question.
Thank you, Michael. It does. Thank you.
I think Sanjay was next. I'll just unmute him.
So, can you talk something about Sadhu Om's work, Sadhana Sarayam? Because that's a wonderful work, but I have not seen people talk about it much. So, how do you rate this work, sir? Sadhana Saram, and what is your views on this work?
Sadhana Saram?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, yes, it is a very important work. There's a lot in it, but we have to read it and we have to read it and put it into practice, because it's primarily it's a practical text. Sadhana means means. So the essence of the means. So what is the means? The means is self-investigation and self-surrender. So it's giving us so many useful clues, so much useful guidance on putting what Bhagavan taught us into practice. But I can't say generally more than that. I can't say. Each individual verse has to be read and understood. I mean, I could if I would take individual verses, explain them in context and everything. But a general, just like saying, can you explain to me Uludu Napadu? First, you have to read Uludu Napadu, put it into practice, then it becomes clear. You can, I've been studying Uludu Napadu now for what, 45 years or something, ever since I first came to Bhagavan. But still I'm learning from Uludu Napadu. It's because the meaning of the text is becoming clearer and clearer. So it's like that with any true spiritual text. So if you want to understand Sadhana Saram, you need to study it and it will become clear.
My point was, sir, it's not been discussed. This text, such a wonderful text. We talk about talks, we talk about even Guru Vachaka Koi. Those are good, but like we don't hear about this text. That's what I was asking. Why is it so?
I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, I focus, when I write or talk, I focus mainly on Bhagavan's own works, because for me, everything that is required is in Bhagavan's work. I'm not saying these other texts like Sadhu Om's works, Murugan's works, they're all very useful. But it's, I mean, I've read, obviously I've translated Sadhana Saram, I've translated Guru Vachaka Kovai, and I know there are many very useful ideas. I would recommend it to anyone. But for explaining Bhagavan's teachings, I find focusing on his own text is, by and large, that is, well, that's what appeals to me. That's, I'm not, but I don't mean to diminish the value of Guru Vachaka Kovai or Sadhana Saram or another wonderful work Sadhu Om has written, as referred to earlier, Ramana Sahasram. That's 1,000 verses praying for jnana. That's also a very, very important work, because it's though it's in the form of a prayer, it's all of Bhagavan's teachings are there, expressed in the form of a prayer. So that's a very valuable text. But there is, I think, an English translation. I don't know how good it is, but I don't know. For me, I focus mainly on Bhagavan's teachings. I mean, Bhagavan's, when I say Bhagavan's teaching, I mean Bhagavan's own original writings. As you know from my blog and from these videos, I mostly, because I don't have a vast knowledge. I remember, like Uludu Napadu, it's easy to remember, because I've been studying it for so many years. It's easy to remember most of the verses of Uludu Napadu, most of the verses of Upadeshundya, most of Nana, and a few other works, some of Arunachal Stuti Panchakam and things like that. These are, for me, easy to remember. To remember where, I do remember, oh, in Guru Vachaka Kovai, Bhagavan said that, but I can't remember where he said it or what exactly it was he said. So for me, the essence of everything is, it's all there in Uludu Napadu, Upadeshundya, Who Am I, Nana, Atma-vichara, Arunachal Ashtakam, Arunachal Patikam, all of Arunachal Stuti Panchakam is wonderful. So, I mean, Bhagavan has given us so much, both in his own writings and through the writings of devotees like Murugan and Sadhu Om. We've got more than enough. So we take whatever we find useful. So, yeah, I don't know what more I can say on that than that. It's certainly, as you say, Sadhana Saram is a very important work. But what is most essential is Bhagavan's own original writings, in my view.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
I think Rati is next, Michael.
Yes.
Michael, it's a blessing to be here today, to listen to you. It's to hear almost as if Bhagavan is talking to us all. It's so just wonderful. My question here for you, not really a question, because I see the answers already in the questions and in everything that of the foregoing that you have said today. I see everything already that you have said and understand that, yes. Why is it I don't surrender completely? Why am I frequently, messing with my life and taking on more and more? Why can't I be like what Ramana says, mind your own business, shummaira, shummaira, just be silent, be quiet, abide in maunam, just be maunam, be silent, silence of the mind. Yes, I understand that. In fact, I try to follow that. Through all activity, I try to maintain silence of the mind and silence of maunam. I try to, but I seem to be failing at times because I'm taking more and more nonsensical, things, pursuits, things that I shouldn't be concerned about. I mean, I've let go of my job. I've let go of everything. I've let go of everything really in this world, my family, everything I've let go of. But still there persists something that keeps me going on every day. Wake up every morning, keep going. I don't know what all this is really, Michael. What is all this? But,
We can let go of everything, but so long as we don't let go of I, our letting go is insufficient. That is, the surrender is complete only when we surrender ego. So long as ego is there, it will have interests in other things, it will have desires, it will have attachments, it will have likes, it will have dislikes. These, we may be able to reduce the strength of these to a considerable extent, but they will all remain so long as this I remains. So only by surrendering I, surrendering ego, will the surrender be complete. So we are all on this path. Why we have not surrendered ourselves? Because so long as we have desires and attachments, we're not willing to let go entirely. We let go to a certain extent, but we're still not willing to let go entirely. What is the solution? To continue following the path that Bhagavan has shown us, to patiently and persistently try to turn our attention within. The more we turn our attention within, the more we will lose our interest in other things. Our attachments will become weaker and weaker and weaker, until finally we'll be willing to give ourselves entirely to Bhagavan, surrender ourselves completely. So we're all on the path. If we had reached the goal, we wouldn't be here having this discussion. There would be no world in which to have this discussion, because all this comes into existence only when we rise as ego. So we haven't yet reached our goal, but we are on the path. So we just have to continue. We know what the path is. Bhagavan has very clearly shown us the path. We just have to continue following what he said, patiently, persistently. And everything else will fall in place. Does that answer your question?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael. That really answers my question. And it is to act without ego, act without attachment, act without anything. And really, and just as you say, abide within, right? Abide within. Yeah. Abide, be with the inner Atman, be with the Atma, be with the Atma, be with the heart, the Hridayam.
Yeah, actions are of body, speech, and mind. They will go on. We need not be concerned about actions. What we need to do, not to act without ego, be without ego. I mean, not to rise as ego. And to achieve that, we need to turn our attention within.
Yes. Thank you very much, Michael.
We are thereby letting go of everything else.
Yes. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much.
Turning our attention within, that is the true surrender.